Okay, I apologize for that. So yeah, the main takeaway there is that there are research based programs. The trend that you will see for research-based programs to deal with oppositional behavior is that it is behaviorally based, meaning that it's based on principles of positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, ignoring. Um, it is regimented, it is consistent, it is parent-led, it requires homework. So this is not, a parent is not going to be able to drop off a child with a clinician for 50 minutes a week and get them fixed with this type of behavior. And this type of behavior only gets worse without intervention. So if they are super disobedient, vindictive 7-year-old, the teen years are going to be rough. One way that it can really get rough is if they start to meet criteria for conduct disorder. So if you think about it on a spectrum, we've got ADHD at one end. These kids are impulsive, have a hard time with self-control. There's a large overlap between ADHD and ODD. So ODD is we're getting more into being angry and vindictive and flat out defiant. And then at the most severe end of the extreme would be conduct disorder. Conduct disorder is the more intense, probably the most intense disruptive behavior disorder for children. It is not common. It is very intense and extreme. Let me show you what the criteria looks like. This is the criteria for conduct disorder. So we're talking about repetitive and persistent pattern of behaviors. This is not a one-off type of issue that is going against age-appropriate norms, and there has to be 3 of the 15 below in the last 12 months, with at least 1 being in the last 6 months. So you think 3 of 15, maybe that's not, very many, but these are pretty extreme behaviors. So often bullying, so they have to often bully in order to meet that, or intimidate, or initiating fights, using a weapon, physically cruel to people, physically cruel to animals, stolen, forced someone into sexual activity, so we're starting to get into sexual assault and rape, a fire setting, deliberately destroyed property, broken into someone else's house, lying to obtain goods, basically kind of conning people out of their things, stolen items, stays out at night, sneaking out before age 13, running away overnight while living with parents, and skipping school before age 13. So these are pretty extreme behaviors. This is not, a 5-year-old who is getting in trouble at school. These are kids who are torturing animals, setting things on fire, having elaborate schemes to con people out of money or possessions. We'll start getting into probably early sexual activity, drug use, things like that. There needs to be a significant impairment on their functioning. And once they are 18, you need to start looking at antisocial personality disorder, which we'll talk about in a second. So there's 3 types: childhood onset, adolescent onset, and unspecified. You're not real sure when it started. And then you specify kind of which of these characteristics best describe a lack of remorse, lack of empathy, unconcerned about performance, very shallow or deficient affect. So if you've seen like American Psycho, there's a lot of examples of this, but when I think of being very shallow, if you've seen that movie, his obsessions with things that are so monetary and materialistic would be a good example. And then again, mild, moderate, or severe. So these are, like I said, pretty intense behaviors. We're not simply talking about children who break the rules. That would be more of the ODD type There should be some evidence before age 13, as you just saw. Once they turn 18 and they're an adult, you're looking more at antisocial personality disorder. If you've ever looked in the DSM for a sociopath or a psychopath, neither of those terms are actually clinically used in the DSM. They would both follow or fall under the category of an antisocial personality disorder, which is that varying severity as far as how badly you're hurting people, whether you're hurting them emotionally or financially or physically. So on one end, you might have kind of the Ponzi scheme, used car salesman type idea, and on the other end, you have full-blown, serial killers. And that's antisocial personality disorder. That's where psychopathology, as far as psychopaths and sociopaths, as the everyday language of that, those would fall under antisocial personality disorder. And that's often what conduct disorder becomes without correction. Watch one more video. This is of a child with conduct disorder. Might serve as your birth control for the day.
The chickens because she was angry at us. She was kicking the farm animals and hitting them with sticks. She's very cruel to Natasha behind closed doors. They've been in the hospital with stitches, black eyed. She kicks me, she punches me, tries to kill me. But I looked her that I really don't really like her. Why she's just a pain to. And that's just Lana. Imagine a 12 or 15-year-old boy can take. Hey, Mom, how many times I have to say, do not say shut up? Hey, it's a survival mechanism Dina says you learned in the orphanage. Even that, he can become violent. Beating up kids at school and his sisters at home. I guess that's the answer. I got humanity hit, twice in the night, pick up the fly. He put Lana's head for a wind on him, and that is a problem, saying the big savior. Lifting him up by the back of the jacket and swinging him down the neck. And if that wasn't enough, Leanne discovered Dina was doing drugs. And then she found his journal, which he threatened to kill people. Leanne decided Dina's behavior had become dangerous. So Dina no longer lives at home. The past year, he's lived here at the depot, a residential school for troubled kids. Family therapist, Joe Maggiani. He says the depot may be Dina's last chance to get help. What is the likelihood of this kid? He was found and one of us get out of control. Staying in control is almost impossible for Dina, even at school. But look, it's to stop. There's always the attempt to diffuse a bad situation, and activities to channel the anger. Dina goes home. Okay. Don't do that to the outside, guys. Is that anything here? She can. I don't think so. She can. The steps and decides that renovating her house is in his way. me those words are walking down the community license. That's what a kid not do. I'm trying to find out this was. How can I do what about disruptive protocol? 6 months after adopting, Leanne and Richard's marriage was over. She says the strain was simply too much, and Richard moved out. Why the hell? Leanne was left to raise the kids on her own. As Natasha was out of the shoes on the air, it's a long-term commitment. What are you doing? No matter what, Gina, Lana, and Natasha do. And of course, Gina ends up in jail because he steals the car he's responsible for. And they're also financially responsible for anything he does, which shows the lookout. But you may know that until he's 18, that lot of skill, they're responsible for children years, and you don't know what happened in his first 12 years of his life. And what his genetic makeup. A lot about children's background. She might have been getting prepared, but that wasn't information the adoption agency disclosed. Nina told her that her background, and I thought it was probably open. But no one told me.
Okay. I realized some of that was not super pleasant to watch, and that's how it is. It's not, and that's what I mean by it not being common. You don't see kids at that level very often. And when you do, you aren't going to be talking about traditional therapy working for these kids. In this situation, he almost had to be removed from the home because his siblings were in danger. And that's often the case. Once other children start to become, once their safety starts to become an issue, they often need to go to an inpatient facility. There's medication. There's a lot of more kind of in-depth therapy that needs to take place beyond what a typical counselor can do in a weekly session. Now, she alluded kind of to the fact that just this son was adopted, and I'm not really sure how the first 12 years went. It kind of leads into a discussion about things like trauma, what was modeled for him, who knows what was going on with his parents, was their drug use during pregnancy, and all those things are important. They're important maybe in developing empathy for the child, or kind of an understanding where the child's coming from. However, it doesn't matter when we start talking about excusing the behavior. Okay, so you were, let's say that he was victimized as a child. The odds are high that he was, but we still can't throw a 4-year-old against the wall, right? And so the behavior still has to change. The rest of it, yes, needs to be addressed and needs to be understood. But obviously, the prison system isn't going to care, which is where a lot of these kids end up. I mean, a lot of them have interaction with the law. By the time they're adolescents, they've broken the laws. You saw that list: sexual assault, theft, so breaking and entering. So it's a pretty serious situation for sure, and often requires full-time inpatient help. I did want to show you, this is Intervention Central. There are behavioral interventions here. This would be more for younger children and children who are more on the ODD side and not the conduct disorder side, but helping to reduce disruptive behavior. They get a little break, some self-management, self-monitoring ideas, how to plan. Schools do what's called behavioral intervention plans, BIPs, and there's some apps to help with that. Challenging students, so power struggle, that kind of conversation while at school. So there's a lot here. I just wanted to kind of give it to you as a resource. And that's really all I have for that today. Next time we meet, which I believe is the first week of March, I am planning to do live Zoom. So I will remind you of that and send out the link. So far, your quizzes and your discussions have looked really good. I appreciate your work on those so far. I appreciate you letting me know if things aren't showing up so that I can make sure and fix it. Today is Friday, the 14th is when I'm recording this. I'm planning or scheduled to be induced Monday the 17th, so in a few days, if I haven't had these twins yet. So it might be a little bit harder to get a hold of next week, but this video will be up for you. The assignments will be up the week after that, and we should be good to go. And then I'll be back the first week in March to teach via Zoom. So happy Valentine's Day and enjoy your weekend.